This program is sponsored in part by the National Catholic Society of Foresters. Hello again, and welcome to Looking at Social Justice. It's my privilege to sometimes have guests back again. And this is our 51st program, but we have Liza Apper, who is a oblate of St. Benedict and the co-founder with her husband of the local St. Benedict Catholic Worker house here in Fresno. Today we're going to have Liza not talk about the grief ministry that she directs out of the Catholic Worker, but a program that she and a colleague are working on to help us become more in touch with detention, with the migrant situation in our country, with the whole work that ICE is doing, the disruption it's causing in our communities, and for the work that Catholic workers do to make us aware of the need for a nonviolent, prayerful response to what goes on in our country. So Liza, can you tell us a little bit about, I guess we'll begin with Calia Kammer, your connection with this pilgrimage that's going to begin with her walking from Manzanar all the way to our detention center in Bakersfield at Mesa Verde ICE Detention Center. Can you introduce us to your colleague and what she's doing and why we're going to be going down on the 22nd of this month of August to be there in prayer with those detained?
Okay. Well, Calia Kammer is a member of our San Jose Catholic Worker. She's a young woman in her 20s who has started this pilgrimage almost 200 miles from Manzanar to Mesa Verde. And she's calling it a pilgrimage because by definition, a pilgrimage is making a long journey as an act of religious devotion for a purpose. And her devotion as a Catholic worker is to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And her purpose is she wanted to physically link Manzanar and Mesa Verde, the two sites of U.S. government crimes against humanity. And that was referred to by Ben Ferrance, who was the last living U.S. prosecutor at Nuremberg. And he's 99 years old, and what he said about what is happening in these camps and at the border is crime against humanity. So Calia wants to highlight that by looking at what the Japanese camp and at the current one in Bakersfield for immigrants who are seeking asylum. She said her journey's purpose is to increase empathy for migrants through her journey and daily blog that focus on the spiritual, the economic, and the social explorations of the current crisis regarding migrants, those who are seeking asylum in our country.
Interesting that it's Manzanar to Mesa Verde, because when the diocese was celebrating its 50th anniversary, there was a major effort to go out to what the Pope would call the periferia, to the outer limits of what is our reality, not just geographic, but as he calls it, existential. So the diocese prioritized certain places that are in our boundaries, and sure enough, the internment camp at Manzanar was one of those highlighted visits with the bishop, with Bishop Armando Ochoa. And then Mesa Verde is a place where 2 years ago, with a group from Faith in the Valley, I was able to go down and visit inside that detention center because it is a designated area where there are many violations, where there are 400 persons who are being detained, not only as we would think many Mexican Americans, these are people from Africa and from the Middle East, many, many detained people. So I am so glad that you're going to introduce us to the prayer we're going to be doing at this site right in Bakersfield, where we do have chaplains ministering. Deacon Scotty Bourne visits that detention center and offers communion to the inmates. And Sister Elaine Elgart, one of the Sisters of the 11th Hour, is one of those wonderful nuns that has prison ministry as her vocation. So tell us more now about why it is that you are getting involved with Calia over this effort to celebrate prayerfully a protest against what's going on.
Well, the Catholic Worker has always had a commitment to justice, to living out the gospel, and to speaking for those who need that voice to be advocating for them. Archbishop Romero said, "We are the voice for the voiceless." And so we have a long history of that. What connected me personally is the treatment of the families and the separation of the children at the border, which, again, Ben Faraz, the U.S. prosecutor for Nuremberg, said is a crime against humanity. We prefer to call them both Manzanar and Mesa Verde concentration camps because, by definition, there's an author named Andrea Pitzer who wrote A Global History of Concentration Camps, and she says the definition is mass detention of civilians without a trial. You know, we have over 600,000 undocumented European people in the United States who are not touched by this crisis. People of color seem to be the ones that are targeted for deportation. Even Congressman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who was at the border herself, has taken, and under much criticism, has called them concentration camps. At Mesa Verde especially, we've targeted because it is in our diocese, and Calia came up with her commitment to the pilgrimage to go there. And so we looked at some investigations, and you were right, Jim. In 2016, ICE's own Office of Detention Oversight found that they were only compliant in 4 out of the 16 standards that ICE has. They had deficiencies in sexual assault prevention, use of force, food service, and medical care. So when you put this together with the mass detention or incarceration of civilians without trial and the conditions that they've been forced to live under, we believe that we can agree with Andrea Pitzer, the author, that it is indeed a concentration camp, both Manzanar and Mesa Verde.
What is it that you know that Calia is doing on her journey, this 200 miles? Something about writing daily blogs and sharing what is the experience with themes and with prayers. Do you want to introduce us to something that she is making available? And then you also want to tell us about your website where you have these available for us to go and see right on your website.
Well, Calia is spending the time walking those 200 miles, praying and being in touch with her own gospel call to speak for the voiceless. And these blogs that she has one every day. She started August 7th. And on our site, the Catholic Worker site, which is sbcw.org, you can click into these blogs. And she has one every day. And the amazing thing about it is it's not only a reflection on a theme, but she also has a course of action that you can take. And her blog on Saturday, August 10th, particularly interested me because it's something that any of us can do. She reflects about how peace calls for courage, and she suggests as the action that you write. There's a clearinghouse on that blog for people who would like to write to those in these incarceration, detention, concentration camps, immigrants themselves. And that's something every Catholic can do, is to write a letter to people who are incarcerated. migrants who are missing their families, who are scared and lonely. And on that site, if you go to Saturday, August 10th, you can click on that, and there's a link to that clearinghouse, and they will assign you a person, give them your address, and you can start letter writing from home.
Now, with these people that we're being assigned to at that site, they're all at Mesa Verde, or not? Or are they scattered in?
You could probably request
Yeah.
someone at Mesa Verde, and you can visit them. So if you find yourself writing to a person at Mesa Verde, you might want to take the next step and visit them.
About visiting, I want to let you know how overwhelming the visit was that the Faith in the Valley, our interfaith group of clergy, we found it was almost repellent what it was when we arrived, because the packaging of the GEO group, these people that have these privately owned prison industry, they are giving us a tour as though they're showing off a wonderful facility. And yet, when we were able prayerfully to meet with the inmates, both men and women, we found out what the situation is. And it is amazing that what the United States is doing right now is turning over to these privately funded and very lucrative companies, especially the GEO group. They are the ones who are controlling what goes on. And therefore, they're also less controlled by what would be standards that we would hopefully maintain at our federal and state facilities, because these are privately directed.
Yeah, GEO is the group that is the private company running Mesa Verde. It's a Florida-based group, and it's the largest private prison company in the United States. 25% of its revenue comes from ICE. And 1/3 of all detainees that ICE has are in GEO facilities. They have 2 in California, and they have 10 others in the United States for detainees. The contract that they signed just recently in March in Bakersfield was for $19.4 million, and they contracted from March of 2019 now to March. The contract is valid until March of 2020. So one of the reasons that they contract to cities like Bakersfield or McFarland, which is where they keep detainees who have committed crimes, is because the very point you make, less oversight. They don't have to be responsible. If there are complaints and certain violations, they can ignore them for as long as possible, because they are dealing with smaller entities than, the U.S. government.
Now, another one of the blogs that we were talking about as we were preparing our conversation, you said, for the 15th of August, the Feast of the Assumption, which we're celebrating as we record the program, had a beautiful reflection of Calia that you wanted to share. This might be one time to let us know that when people go to see the blog, it may include something such as a prayer honoring Our Lady as we celebrate her feast on the 15th of August.
Well, the blog for the August 15th was entitled God, Our Mother, and it was honoring, of course, the Feast of the Assumption. She has a link on there of stories of migrant women, and I think it's in the stories that we can personalize what is exactly happening to those people, immigrants who are seeking refuge in our country. This woman, her name was Janet. She was 36 years old. She's a migrant woman picking food, and really she's undocumented, and she's fearful every day that she's going to be deported. She's in South Texas. She picks cilantro by the box, and a good picker can do 1 box for an hour, and which works, and they pay her $3 an hour. She works from 5 a.m. in the morning to 6 p.m. at night, and she is paid $39 a day. Knowing how exploited these women are, she has 3 children, and all of them have birth defects or mental health challenges because of her exposure to pesticides in the field. She is frightened every day that she's going to be rounded up and taken away from her children. And so Calia has a link to other stories like that in the article. But the most important thing is she is a woman, and she is a migrant woman that has no voice. And so Calia wrote this prayer, and I think it's very appropriate. She says, "O God, creator of the heavens and of earth, help us to see one another through eyes enlightened by understanding and compassion. Help us to listen to the voices of all our sisters throughout the world with respect and attention. Open our eyes to the cries of women who have been denied their rights and their dignity. Empower us to be instruments of justice for all, for in the wholeness of Christ, all mothers are our own mothers, and we are one." Amen.
Amen. So we'll be gathering, those of us who are able to join, we'll be meeting at Mesa Verde, which is very easily reached down in Bakersfield. We'll, if you wanted to find out more after you see this program, we will be able to give you the exact street address so you could Google GPS yourself and get there. But when we're there, just before 12, hoping that Calia arrives within the hour, we are going to pray for an hour. Do you have a ballpark idea of just what you envision our prayer vigil to be, and then tell us a little bit about the hopes of what you project that monthly we may be able to actually institutionalize a memorial so that it's not a one and done, but rather the beginning of a commitment of those who can to pray for an hour at a given moment down there in Bakersfield.
Well, Catholic workers have traditionally been of prayer and action. In fact, Dorothy Day, who was a Benedictine oblate, our motto is Ora et Labora, pray and work. And so we're all about that. And Calia has paved the way in terms of her meditations, her prayer, and her blog that calls people to daily actions, whether it's letter writing or contributing to immigrant rights organizations, or even assessing our own action and what we would like to do. We're going to start to assemble about 9 o'clock on August 22nd, and Calia is due to come in at noon, and for an hour we will welcome her and pray with her. She will be reflecting about her journey, but we are also going to call people to a monthly vigil that we will be having, the St. Benedict Catholic Worker, at Mesa Verde once a month. And that is very important, that we not only have compassion and empathy for what is happening to our brothers and sisters, but also that we have action. We will have a beautiful banner, and you can't really tell this is our picture logo, but it says, "Love does no wrong to a neighbor," and it's from Romans 13:10. And then on the bottom it says, "Close ICE concentration camps." Our goal is to send that message that these camps have no right to exist, that is not about loving our neighbor. Jesus says, welcome the stranger. And this is a violation of everything we are as human beings. We did not welcome people our Japanese American neighbors were incarcerated against their will. And now we have our brothers and sisters who live here, and some who are crossing the border to seek asylum, to say, you have no right to be here. Yeah.
Now, this thing about, you said 9 o'clock, help me out to know, am I having people arrive early at 9? What happens between 9 and noon? Or the little plug that we have, the little icon that we've been sending out does mention noon. So is it enough that people come at noon, that they drive down or drive up?
Sure. If they would like to come, and we'll have snacks and things available, but also more importantly to have the conversation. Some people like to come early, and also sometimes you say noon and people, oh, it's 1 o'clock. So if 9 o'clock, if we could start to gather, to have conversation, we'll have some prayer time that's independent of the 12 to 1, but focuses on, stories and prayer reflections on our migrant brothers and sisters. So you won't be just standing around. We'll have circles of people who will be discussing and talking and waiting and singing and praying, waiting for Calia at noon. And then when she comes to, as a group, to hold together, to welcome her, to let her know the importance of her message, and that we are in solidarity with her, we are supporting her, and then she will share with us what some of her journey is. And people are welcome to stay past the 1 o'clock time, but for people who know, that vigil will be from 12 to 1 o'clock on August 22nd.
Now, you did have this idea about a monthly celebration of faith, hope, and love right there at the very same site where we'll be at Mesa Verde. What, tell us a little bit about why you wouldn't want to just do it the one time, but how you think we can set up almost a system of knowing at a given day at this hour we will be there. How will we, whom will we be inviting? Whom do you see most possibly joining us for that?
Vigils are a very effective way of touching people's hearts, of asking people to think and really become more aware of what is happening around them, whether it's the guards working at Mesa Verde, the traffic coming by. I've been in so many vigils, it's unbelievable, and I have seen the hearts change. People at armament factories who are building weapons, who decide, I saw your vigil. I remember one year we were vigiling in front of Lockheed, and we just had one banner that simply said, "Seek the disarmed Christ." And we had 2 people from Lockheed who came to us after a year and said, we are retraining to do something else. And our goal, our ultimate goal is to see Mesa Verde close. That's our ultimate goal. But really, as the Buddhists say, there are no bad people, they're just unaware. And we would like to bring an awareness to that site of just exactly what it's about, and that we would like our brothers and sisters not to be there and not to have this in the first place. So awareness, we start with a prayer, and it's only an hour, doable. And it will be exactly an hour. We'll start with prayer, and then we will hold the banner. And the banner, as I said, says, but the banner will talk about, this is not the way that we love our neighbor. We don't incarcerate them and subject them to sexual assault or use of force or lack of medical care. That's not how we love our neighbor. We welcome the stranger. And as Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist, said as he played at the Mexico-California border, he said, our brothers, this is not a house. Our house is not full, and we welcome those who want to come to our country. And I know, as a daughter of Italian immigrants who were poor, and my grandmother was illiterate, never spoke English, I wouldn't be here if they didn't make that trek. And by the current administration's criteria, they were poor. they were attacks on the system or whatever, they're trying to say now. But they came with hopes and dreams like these families come with hopes and dreams. And we should welcome them as Christ would welcome them. The Benedictine motto is greet all as Christ. And you don't greet Christ by throwing them in a detention center and ripping their children from their arms.
As we're thinking this week of this time in August, mid-August, we've heard some very awful things about even a reinterpretation of Emma Lazarus's message at the Statue of Liberty, to have it paraphrased or amended, that it's give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, if you can stand on your own 2 feet and will not become a public charge. So the idea of our prayer and our vigil is to, I guess, expand our hearts so that we won't be like Director Cuccinelli, who is thinking that there is a need to separate European immigrants from other immigrants, and only those that are going to benefit our country immediately financially, but rather, where are the people who always knew that the United States was available as a possible place to, with work and dedication, to raise a family and to have a decent life. What's going on right now, and we did talk about this in our prep for the program, what's going on in Mississippi with the raids on processing houses, where many people that have been working but just barely scraping by, but still having a life and a family, are being suddenly rounded up and being quickly dispatched, broken away from their families, and sent away.
Yeah. That was a CNN story that broke today, August 15th. And it said that children in immigration raids suffer severe trauma. It happened in Morton, Mississippi, and they found that the children had symptoms of post-traumatic stress and grief. And the pastor of a church down there, it's called St. Anne's Catholic Church. It's in the nearby town of Carthage, Mississippi. The priest's name is Father Odell Medina, and he had 50 members of his congregation gathered up and brought to detention. And that's another thing Catholics can do. Look it up. This is the age of the internet. Find Father Odell Medina. Find his parish, St. Anne Catholic Church in Carthage, Mississippi. Send him a note of support. Maybe even send money.
We have to close this program now, Lisa. Thank you. We'll be there on the 22nd of August.
Thank you.
Hope you'll join us. Until next time, God bless.